This podcast is brought to you by Zoe the Cat, the world's leading producer of imagined internal cat monologues. Bring a Zoe into your home and you'll be powerless to resist staring at her in bewilderment, trying to imagine just what's going through her head. The most up-to-date model features such perplexing behavior as 0 to 60 acceleration to sprint across an empty living room, predatory growls at nearly microscopic fruit flies, pupil-dilating fascination with any source of running water, and that's not mentioning her love for using her teeth to shred any important documents accidentally left unguarded on the counter. Her battery life is unparalleled. One bowl of Meow Mix and she'll go all day long. Add a few grams of catnip and she'll go all night too. Earn strange looks at your house parties, ruin your romantic life, and bond with your family by flexing your creativity muscles and voicing the internal monologues you can't help but envision flitting around in Zoe's feline brain. Cat, 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 I'm cat. Ooh, shiny thing. Moth, moth, there's a moth. I think someone is watching me. Cat, 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 cat. Hungry, hungry, me hungry human. Come make me food, waterfall. I hungry. Where did that moth go? Hunting moth, hunting moth. Ha! I kill you now, moth. Now less hungry, need pets affection. Affection me so hard right now. Frisky, frisky, frisky. I'm feeling frisky. You know. Things like that. Zoe the Cat. Consciousness is a spectrum, and we specialize in providing you only the farthest, most confusing end of it. Welcome to Little, Middle, and Biggle. I'm your middle brother, Joshua.
I'm your little brother, Andrew.
I'm your biggle brother, Noah.
And I'm their dad, Dan.
And we are the ones who will try our best to answer the little, middle, and biggle questions we all have in life. Dad, you are here today in honor of Father's Day, because we couldn't leave you out after having Mom on. So you will do us the honors, if you are so prepared, of supplying all three little, middle, and biggle questions.
I am indeed.
Wonderful. Will you start us off with the little then?
Well, sure. So, it occurs to me, I'm a dad. We're all men here. So,
I'm a real boy.
Where's the strangest place you've ever peed?
Andrew knows my answer for this one.
I do.
Dad, do you want to go first, or do you want to have us go first?
Oh, you guys go first, without a doubt.
Okay. Any among us who wants to go first? I definitely have an answer locked and loaded.
You
Oh,
go for
yeah,
it.
me too,
I'm still
actually.
thinking.
What
Okay.
an
All right, you guys
interesting,
both go for it.
interesting way to say that.
Yeah, I mean, so I'm pretty sure I've told this story to only Mom and Andrew, but for an entire month while I was in Spain, I peed into a bottle every night, because I am an old man in the sense that I am incapable of holding my bladder the full 8 hours that it takes to sleep. And I was living with 3 other girls in a shared flat.
Other girls. You are a girl?
No, but other people who are female, does that make you... Saying that there are other girls, I don't think implies that I am myself am a female. Anyway, moving on. I was living with 3 other people who happened to have 2 X chromosomes, and we were in the same flat. I had a room that was directly connected to the living room and right in front of the TV. So I would have to walk in front of the TV, between the TV and the couch, to get to any sort of toilet area. And so, I mean, the other option was to just, pee out the window, which I was not going to do. So I realized this my very first day there, and I thought, oh no, this is going to be so weird, because I usually just sleep, especially in Spain, where it's 78, 79 degrees Fahrenheit in the summer with 0 air conditioning at night. I was like, I am just going to be sleeping in my underwear. So, I'm either going to have to really disturb my sleep schedule and, get dressed and undressed multiple times a night, and then also face the awkwardness of walking in front of the TV with these other girls and their boyfriends who watch TV until 2 a.m. every night. And that would be a disaster. Or I could just pee into a bottle and then empty the bottle every morning. So that's what I did. I took the first ever soda that I drank in Spain, and I saved that bottle.
Soda.
Oh yeah, saved that bottle, and every night, 2 or 3 times a night, I would fill it up. Man, I wouldn't fill it up 2 or 3 times a night. I would fill it up progressively over 2 or 3 sessions in the night, and then go. When I went to the bathroom in the morning, I would just empty it out. And it was kind of gross, but I mean, heck of a lot better than getting really poor sleep for a month.
There's great historical precedent for that. I mean, Howard Hughes locked himself in a room for months, peed in milk bottles, and of course he lined the wall with them. I'm glad you didn't do that. But
wow,
That's
I
pretty strange.
did not know that. Okay, who wants to go next?
Mine is not as, I don't know, I don't think it's as weird. I feel like a lot of guys have done this, but I was on a hiking trip with a couple of my friends in Paladero Canyon, and we came upon this cliff, probably like a 75-foot cliff. And I was like, I need to pee, and I've always wanted to pee off of a really high place. So I peed off of the cliff, and I used to have a picture. I think it got deleted.
Oh, I still have it.
Okay, well, awesome.
Yeah,
That's
I've
good
seen
to
it.
know. Yeah. Peed off a cliff. It was long enough a stream that, it was normal for a little bit, and then the wind started deflecting it. It was kind of cool.
that's pretty
That's kinda
impressive.
cool.
I
Yeah.
mean, so far we've had pragmatic and epic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what have you got, Noah?
Okay, I've had to think a little bit. I think the weirdest place that I've ever peed was in Bueller, which is one of the abandoned buildings on Hendrix campus. And it was like the weirdest part about it, besides it being in like this creepy old abandoned science building, was like I just really had to go. And I was like, well, I don't want to stop exploring, but I don't want to just pee in a corner in this sacred building. And so I went and found the bathroom, and there were urinals there with water in them. The water was no longer clear, but there was
gross.
there was water, and so I very tactfully urinated along the edge of the urinal so as to reduce any sort of splash of nasty mystery water onto myself.
Yeah.
And then flushed and just didn't think about the fact that it probably would not work. And so I flushed the urinal, and it just there's no water coming in, but it still opened up the bottom. So it just just sank away into nothing, and then it was just dead silence afterwards instead of any refilling of water or anything. It was kind of weird and creepy, but
Like an airplane
kind of cool at the same
toilet.
time.
No, I was
Yeah.
thinking like in the International Space Station where it's just shoop, and then it's out into space.
Mm.
Yeah, that's what it was like. It was
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah, okay, hearing you say that makes me think I was also very careful to always pee into the side of the bottle rather than directly into the bottle when I was peeing in the bottle, because I didn't want the roommates to be like, what's that sound? Have you guys noticed that every time at midnight when we're watching the movie, this isn't part of Game of Thrones, is it? Yeah. Okay, Dad, will you give us your answer?
Sure. Of course, I had already thought about what my answer would be, and as many of my stories dates back to college and walking home from Aggieville with Pete and Jim Herdig, Bob Avery. I think Matt Nordis was there, and I'm pretty sure Mark Beal was there. And this is probably bad because hopefully the statute of limitations on this is far, far gone. But one of my brothers from the fraternity's girlfriend had just broken up with him. I think I've told you guys this story before.
I don't think I've heard this, and I'm excited to hear where it's going.
So she had this really kind of beat up old VW Bug, and the window was down, and we had just pounded a lot of beer in Aggieville and really had to pee.
Oh, God.
And so several of us peed in the window.
Awesome.
That was really, really awful in retrospect, but at the time.
That sounds pretty hilarious.
Oh, that car got mandalized. Oh, that's horrible. Well, that is a side to you that I never knew existed, Dad. Will you take us away with the middle question?
Sure, I will. Okay, well, on a little more serious note, so the term hero has been bandied around a lot in the last few years, particularly the last few months with the COVID pandemic. So what is something that you have witnessed in your lifetime that you thought was truly heroic, and why?
Can you go first for this one? Because I'm blanking.
Wow, well, I'm nominating Noah to go first. Because
that's not how this
Noah
works.
always goes last.
No, it does not always go last. When he asks the question, this is how this works. Whoever asks the question goes first. Typically, I was giving you a grace by offering to go first for the little question. So,
someone hasn't been paying very much attention.
Yeah, don't you listen to our podcast, Dad?
Well, man, that's a tough one actually. But
yeah, that's a really tough one. I would have volunteered to go, but. Man.
I guess what comes to mind is not, and this actually, I don't know, it may sound kind of cliche, but, I don't think of, the stuff that, about people wearing their masks in and having to go to work with the COVID pandemic or firefighters or, things like that. I mean, the really heroic things to me that I've gotten to witness in my life are generally the ones that are unnoticed or maybe even pass unrecognized ever. And it's, the mom who is going through college at age 28 with 3 kids and divorced and, barely scraping by and still just makes it happen every day and has her kids, clean. And they, they come in, say to my clinic, and I just say, wow, there's a lot of love there, and there's, you just hope that one of these days those kids realize what a hero, their mom really is, So that's what comes to mind for me.
Cool.
Good answer, man.
Did any of you come up with one while Dad was going?
I think I came up with one. It was inspired by, Dad's story, but there was this little kid, not like a little kid, he's probably like 12 years old, who was in the ER all the time, but he was never the patient. It was his grandmother that was the patient. And he just completely, he would come in, wheel her in the wheelchair. She had some sort of, chronic debilitating conditions and couldn't do much for herself, and he was her primary caretaker. And so at 12 years old, he'd wheel her in all the time and tell us what was going on, and then he'd sit down and we'd come back in, he'd just be sitting there doing his homework, and then we'd do whatever needs to be done, and then he'd wheel her on back out and just get a ride for them both to go back home. And I don't know where his parents were. They were always they always looked clean and well cared for, but he just at an age when we probably weren't doing anything like that, he was just being a caretaker for this person who had no chance otherwise. So it was very, very inspiring, and also a little odd sometimes.
Yeah. Andrew, you said that you were going to go, and then...
Yeah. So I sort of have 2 answers. Because the first one that came to mind, I was like, well, I feel like this is just coming to mind because we're sitting with Dad. But a couple Easters ago, we were on the way to Easter church, and it was legendary because we were actually going to be to church on time.
No way.
Yep. And then
this isn't a real story.
I know. I'm making this up.
This is high fantasy.
And there was this obviously homeless guy in the middle of the road in a wheelchair. And we drove past and we were like, huh, that's weird. And then Dad was like, you know what? No, let's go check up on him. And Dad got out and wheeled him into the AutoZone parking lot. And not only that, but then you just kind of sat and talked to him and listened to him for a little bit. And I remember Mom looking back at us and she goes, I don't care what you guys think, but that is Jesus right there.
And Andrew initially thought that Mom was talking about the homeless guy, which was a great...
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah, you were like, the homeless guy? And I was like, no. Dad. Yeah.
Well, you know, Mrs. Brizzolero would always talk to us about how Jesus was the guy you would never expect him to be.
Yeah.
Or whatever.
I always remember that too in our catechesis. We talk about that, yeah.
Yeah. So good job, Dad. You've been a hero in my life. Also, though, are like all of the teachers I've ever had, and I've really mostly lucked out with teachers in high school because they're all willing to actually take time that they could be being lazy or at home with their kids or something and spend it with you and extend their job, even though they're not getting paid for it or anything. They're just doing it because they want you to understand. And they want you to have that knowledge, man. And I think that's a pretty dang awesome thing to do. Just, I kind of agree with you, Dad, that it's not the people that society hoists up as heroes that are the real heroes. It's kind of the ones that nobody is really looking at them, but they're still doing the right thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That's well said.
I think that it's even more than that. In my experience, it's been not the people who have this one great landmark event, but who have this kind of lifetime of giving and charitable living, and definitely not for the sake of recognition or anything. Like, Andrew, hearing you talk about past teachers made me think probably the best answer I can come up with off the top of my head is Mrs. Brown from Tascosa, who has really spearheaded the Friends in Service for Hunger Club, which is all about reducing food insecurity for children in a way that is not shameful for them, does not make them feel ashamed or embarrassed or anything. Just getting them what they need for no other reason than because they need it and because it's a good investment in their future. And in doing so, investing in our whole society, just because the more happy, productive people there are in the world, I truly believe the better world we will have.
Oh, cannot agree more.
Yeah.
Preach.
Shout out to Mrs. Brown if you're listening.
Yeah, go Miss Brown. I think I sent this link to you.
Who am I kidding?
If you are listening, you by no means are allowed to say, well, it's all the kids that do the work. Because we all know that you're the one who, spearheads the whole operation and actually organizes things. And I do not think we would run very well without a supreme leader.
A tribute to Mrs. Brown.
Yes. This episode's sponsored by...
No, it's already got a sponsor. Sorry, it's going to be one of our cats.
Mrs. Brown.
Noah, you're going to say something, though. If Mrs. Brown does listen to this.
Oh, I was just going to say, that's a pretty, epic goal there. If Mrs. Brown listens to this, all right, cool, we've made it.
Yeah, that's true.
This is successful. Really, if any of our, top-notch, elementary through high school teachers listen...
I'll just feel awesome if anyone outside of our nuclear family listens, honestly.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Hey, I was just thinking, I ended up kind of putting myself on the spot, thinking I'd have a chance to think of a real good personal example instead of something generic. And yes, I do 100% agree with what I just said, but can I just add one more example I just happened to think of? And I've thought of this guy over and over through the years.
Yeah, go for it.
His name was Bill Davis, and we kind of bonded when I was an intern on ICU rotation because he had, when he was the age I am now and younger, had spent a lot of time out around the Creed area and done all those passes and trails. And I even brought maps up to him. We looked at them together. But he was slowly dying of aplastic anemia. And I remember the last day in the ICU, and he was so anemic he could barely function, and we were having to transfuse him every single day. It was just over and over, and he had developed antibodies, and we had a hard time finding blood for him. And we had a talk, and he just kind of grabbed my hand, and he just said, I think rather than me continue to use up all this blood, it's my time to go. And I've had a great life. And he just kind of said goodbye and just wanted to, it was a selfless thing, that just to give up another hour of life or another day of life just for other people. And that was a really neat thing. I hadn't thought about that in a while. But
Wow.
That is really cool.
Yeah, that beats all the other stories for sure.
it makes me feel good to have said his name out loud, and that it's on a podcast, and maybe somebody will hear about it.
Yeah,
that'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. Don't set your hopes too high, Dad. Okay, I do have to add in, since we are now talking in more personal examples, I will also add in one more. That is, so there was this girl my freshman year of high school named Haley Brumley. Haley Brumley, shout out to you. Hey, you are definitely never going to listen to this. But backstory, when I was in my first year of high school, I knew literally nobody at this new school. And so the first day of school, I had that characteristic, oh no, I'm walking into the cafeteria, I know absolutely nobody, where do I sit feeling. So,
oh man, yeah.
I went out to the picnic benches outside, and I sat down at the one that was there, and I made totally the wrong choice. This was a group of really, really nasty kids who, on the daily, would say like, "Oh wait, spread your stuff out on the seats so that it looks like Joshua can't sit here." And then there's this guy who, oh gosh, I don't even remember his name. I wouldn't even say it just because he doesn't need the publicity. But he would always say like, "Oh, you're so gay. You're so freaking gay. Oh man, you can't even like deny." And I was just horrified that I had to put up with this, or not even put up with this, just like suffer through this every day. But at the same time, I knew nobody else that I could, go sit with. And Haley, one day, she was one of the people who always sat there, and she never really took part in the jibes or anything. She just kind of sat and watched. And then one day she was like, "Guys, he's not gay. You don't have to do that." And they kind of stopped for like 2 days. I mean, yeah, it was not for forever, but those 2 days were the 2 days of freshman year that I dreaded going to school the least. So really, anybody like that who just takes the stand to say, "I've watched this go on for long enough. I'm ready to stand up for this person who, even though they are trying to stand up for themselves, either is not able to or not convincing enough, or maybe just it is impossible given the societal forces stacked against them, stand up for themselves." So yeah.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
Man, I wish that we had known about all those people during high school so we could have gone and peed in their cars.
Oh my gosh.
Yep.
You do not know how often I think about that, but it'd be,
Yeah.
be worse than peeing in their cars.
I mean, they wouldn't
Yeah.
have cars, so you'd have to like pee on their skateboards or something. But
Yeah.
Slash their skateboard wheels, man.
yeah.
Yeah.
Snap their scooters in half. Anyway, enough of my belly aching. Dad, will you go on with the big ol' question, please?
Okay, the big old question is totally different direction. So, sociopaths, are they a necessary offshoot of evolution or a dead end that has to be weeded out? And so,
I feel like this is in reference to one of our neighbors.
no, not a bit. But
Now that I mention it,
no, I mean, true sociopaths, people that do not feel remorse at causing pain, and don't get the fact, or perhaps they do get the fact, the real sociopaths get the fact that they're causing pain and enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
So what are your thoughts? I mean,
This is interesting because I know that I've talked about this with you before, just briefly, but like years ago.
Mm-hmm. You know what? That's right. My thoughts would be that that true sociopaths have they're born without a pathway in their brain, and I don't think they can develop it. Now, I'd love to hear somebody who knows a lot more about that than myself talk about it, but the really true sociopaths, evil people that just make the world awful for everybody else in ways not just uncomfortable, but sometimes deadly. Weeding them out could be just locking them away for good, I guess, but somehow getting their genetic code out of the mix would be a good idea in my opinion. I'm not sure why they exist. Why that evolution would have allowed that to happen, except that probably some of the biggest movers of all time, Genghis Khan may have been a sociopath, but he spread his genetics all over the world, or all over Asia. I mean, I just struggle with how is that
beneficial to
the species? How is that
just from
necessary?
a evolutionary standpoint even?
Yeah. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, okay. So first I want to be a little careful about saying removing their genes from the gene pool. I mean,
I'm not advocating putting anybody to death. Let me put it that way.
Okay. So to answer your question as for how that could be evolutionarily favorable, I think it's important to remember that evolution is just a game of who is most effective at spreading their genes, So if someone is a sociopath and they're able to just grab tons and tons of power and do whatever is necessary to put themselves in positions, whether that's like, feigning that they really feel these emotions and stuff and kind of, I don't know, almost tricking people into wanting to be their spouse or whatever, or, following them. And I mean, I think that is something that evolutionarily speaking in the very short term is super beneficial. However, I think that if our population became like a majority sociopaths, the human species would go kaput really quickly, because everything we have done up until this point, almost everything that we have done that has become such a great success, has been totally based on cooperation. Like, I don't know, railways, International Space Station, the formation of an international, what is it called? The United Nations and things like that, where we can say, okay, these things, we are just not going to do them at all as a species. Unethical. Let's have some laws for even the most unethical things like war, and we're just going to lay those out. I think that, so in that way, I think that sociopaths are an offshoot of evolution, like you said, that could branch off and create a really short branch that would end up just sapping the life out of the whole tree. Does that make any sense?
Mm-hmm. Mistletoe.
Yeah, sure, mistletoe.
Human mistletoe.
You looked like you had a rebuttal to that, Dad. What were you going to say?
No, not a rebuttal. I 100% agree with you. What disturbs me is that if a sociopath can convince enough people in our current world, where we can affect so many others so rapidly, and they get in a position of power, that worries me. That disturbs me.
Now I see who you're really talking about.
Well, I mean, it's true that I think of our current president in that standpoint somewhat as well. But I mean, there
are other examples too.
There are many other examples, but
like YouTubers and Instagram.
Yeah,
true.
Influencers.
I think that the rise of the internet, I'm going to sound like an old fogey now, the rise of the internet has really contributed to that, though, that it is not even like making sociopaths out of people, but just disconnecting people from the fact that what they are doing is actually to real people. I think that if I were, even in President Trump's position, I hate to even compare myself to him, but just to think like it becomes so easy to affect millions with literally a signature. Just to say, okay, all those illegal immigrants, let's just like put them in camps or whatever. And then, that's all drafted out for you by your cronies or whatever. And you just like flick your pen across the page and it's done. And you don't realize that 5 seconds of your life has affected a cumulative like millions and millions and millions of years, millions of lifetimes, that have just been completely shattered or at least diverted very heavily for the foreseeable future.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you say about people not realizing what they're doing is to other human beings is that's not like a trait of a psychopath. It's not that they don't realize they're doing it to other human beings. It's just that they don't care that they are doing it to other human beings. So, and I don't know if I am misconstruing your words here, but to say that humans are kind of tending toward, like the internet has made humans tend toward being a psychopath, being psychopathic, whatever.
We're talking about sociopaths, not psychopaths.
Well, they're the same thing.
I think.
Yeah, they are, dude.
A sociopath would be somebody who, oh man, how do you say it, is not really aware or care about the conventions of society.
Before you say this.
So
I read a whole book called Columbine by Dave Cullen about this, and of course the Columbine shooters one of them was a psychopath, and there was a very long section in the book about, and this is a recent book, explaining how psychopaths and sociopaths are the same thing, that psychopath is kind of the clinical term that they used for a long time, but now they're tending toward using sociopath as like, you don't want to offend this person. You don't want to make them think they're a monster just by using the word. So sociopath is like the psychiatric modern day term. Psychopath.
Just because psychopath has like a negative connotation to it, like you think
Yes.
psychopath like psycho.
Exactly.
That is interesting.
Okay, so they are both forms of antisocial personality disorder. However, according to Psychology Today, actually, the traits of a sociopath are volatile behavioral patterns, including emotional outbursts and lack of self-control. They can tend to form attachments to other individuals and in general enjoy being around other people, although they have no regard for rules put in place by society. However, psychopath, in contrast to sociopaths, this tends to result from more from genetics or congenital injury than environmental factors, and they are extremely manipulative and can easily gain others' trust, but they do not form attachments with others. They also lack empathy and feel no remorse when causing harm.
do you know what then? I guess what I'm really looking at is psychopaths.
Hey, psychopaths it is.
Good job,
We
Andrew.
have learned more.
Thanks for
Mental
clearing
fist
us up
bump.
there. Yeah. So,
That makes me think, and I'm going to shut up in a minute so Noah can say what he was going to say, but it makes me think, occurs to me, perhaps the reason that psychopaths exist is to shock the rest of us into realizing sometimes how we do not ever want to be. Why society exists, why we need to be together, why we need to take a stand on moral issues, and maybe that's their purpose.
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if there's really a purpose for everything like that in sort of an evolutionary way. I think that we could find the meaning that it grants us, but I think it's like saying, well, what's the purpose of earlobes? I mean, earlobes are just kind of there. It's not like they served any evolutionary purpose. We can do things with them, but that does not mean that that is why they exist.
Well, but to take your preference, or your preference, rather your, what am I trying to say?
Analogy?
No, your,
Okay.
your, what you just said a little bit ago. To take that premise, that being our accomplishments as a society are really what is so good about us, and certainly evolution has had pressure toward us working together as a society. Perhaps these outliers do have an effect on that, and that has caused a pressure even further to work together as a society. I mean, if we're lucky, I don't know. Okay, I'm done. I'm shutting up. I'm letting Noah talk.
Man, you guys have just said so many things. I mean, okay, so I'll work backwards, just since that's the last thing that you guys have talked about was the whole, like what you guys were just saying.
Premise.
The premise.
Yeah. Word of the day.
I think I agree kind of with both Dad and Joshua on that maybe there is some sort of pressure for psychopaths to exist because of those effects, and maybe there's not like any like good reason for them to be there, but at the same time they do exist, and maybe regardless of whether there's like a purpose or not, we can make a purpose of sorts by learning from them instead of just letting their negative effects overrule anything else. But what else? I mean, I think it's a weird, I feel like we had this discussion in medical ethics at some point, because we were talking about like gene editing and stuff, and this may be like a weird tangent that we go off on now, but we're talking about like designer babies and stuff, and everyone was pretty much all against the idea of just designing every child. And then the professor was like, cool, like let us into his little mousetrap, and was like, now what about things that are really bad, not just like like
diabetes,
like diabetes or Down syndrome or something, but like genetic predispositions towards being like a mass shooter or like a psychopath or something. And everyone's like, oh yeah, that would be like that doesn't seem like a part of our genetic, what's it called, not our genetic code, like our gene pool that necessarily has any sort of benefit, and in fact is incredibly harmful and horrible. And I don't know, it's weird. I guess you almost have to dissociate weird that we're talking about dissociating when we're talking about psychiatric illnesses, but
yeah, really.
But you have to like dissociate like the individual person and all that they are from that particular aspect of them. And I mean, I don't know, there may be benefits to having psychopaths around, and if nothing else, we may be able to garner benefits from them.
Yeah, garner works.
Yeah. Even if they're primarily harmful. But I think it would be overall better if psychopaths did not exist, and if whatever genes predispose people to being psychopaths, assuming that there's not some other like major benefit to them that we don't know about, that they didn't exist. And at the same time, it's like, it's weird to think about people that are already psychopaths. Like, what do you do with them? Because they're still people. And I mean, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know. But like part of me thinks like maybe we should. This is turning into a long Noah ramble. Sorry.
There's got to be one every episode.
Yeah, part of me thinks that. Well, I mean, like I don't usually think through what I'm going to say before I say it, and so it all just kind of falls apart. But
We have that in common.
yeah, yeah. Part of me thinks, like they're still people, and we should do what we can for them. And then part of me, which is I don't know if is necessarily better or worse, is like, well, they're doing a lot of harm, and maybe it's better just to like, put them away and just like treat them well, but like keep them away from society. And I don't know. I guess a lot of it depends on if there is any sort of actual treatment for that, which there may or may not be.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it's hard because you can't, like, there's no way we'll ever know if a week from now we're going to have a treatment. So, like, what do you do? Do you just sit and wait around for it? I don't know.
Yeah, it's also really
tough.
It's also really hard to talk about locking them away for crimes not yet committed.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that is really that's a weird concept too. Like, why? I don't know. That seems like a dangerous path to go down in and of itself.
Yeah,
But-
like at what risk factor percentage are we going to cut it off where we say, okay, you have this amount of risk to society, so we're going to lock you up. But if you like limbo under that, then you're good to go. I think mostly the impression that I'm getting from you guys is that what would be very helpful is, one, if this really is just all a matter of brain chemistry, which I'm pretty sure most all human behavior kind of is, really all human behavior is just a matter of brain chemistry, then just trying to figure out what it is that causes this and seeing if there is any sort of treatment. Like depression, for centuries, people just thought, oh man, that sucks. Bummer. Sorry that you're depressed. And now we have all of these methods that we have to treat that. And instead of being social pariahs and, just the Eeyores of the village, people are able to live super functional lives. I recognize fully that is many degrees below the extremity of damage that can be caused when compared to psychopathy. But at the same time, they would be super helpful. It would be super helpful to know for sure what and how much can be done. Also, just a greater awareness in the general public of what to look for in someone who could potentially be dangerous, and also what could be done to kind of diffuse them before things started growing out of control, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
This has been a little bit past, but I kind of refuse to believe that their evolutionary purpose is to show us what society needs to not go towards, because they are still humans. I mean, it's just like what we've kind of been skirting along this whole time is treating other people like they are humans. And to say a psychopath is just a human that is placed there for some reason to kill a bunch of people and then get on the news and tell us what not to do seems really just very fundamentally wrong.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I feel like that's trying to give evolution and natural selection this whole sense of agency that it doesn't really has, and it just kind of turns all of us into pawns as far as what, instead of humans, we are just the game pieces that are put into play to cause this further reaction downstream. I think that it's definitely useful to see what good can come of them, like Noah was saying. What meaning we can find in the chaos. But I do not think that chaos inherently has meaning without us ascribing it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
What were you going to say, Noah?
First, that I think Dad's also saying it's not like there's, like it's good to try and find the good in every situation, even if it's not that you should ignore the bad, but you can if you can take all the positive stuff that you can from any person or situation, then you are, you're making a lot. I don't know how to word that. You're making good lemonade with your lemons. I don't know. I give up on that.
No, that's great.
Anyways, but working backwards. Oh, what was the other thing I was gonna say? There was some good thought. I don't know. It doesn't matter. The most important one is I just thought of a Star Trek episode that had to do with this.
Then this is I love it. Tell me.
So there was I don't remember which series it was. I don't remember much of what was going on, but there was some looking back on it, this is probably something they were kind of talking about, as they often seem to allude to actual real world issues. But there was this either species or group from a species or something that was just horrible, and they were psychopaths, and one of them ended up on the ship and got got injured or something, and so went to the medical ward, and with their fancy gizmos and everything, they found there was some misconnection in his brain, and that was just congenital, and so they just fixed it real fast, and then suddenly he was just screaming in agony because he suddenly had a conscience, basically, and could feel the pain of all the terrible things that he had done. And I don't know, that just seemed very similar to what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Next Generation? That sounds very Next Generation-esque.
I have no earthly idea. If I remembered which doctor it was, then that would help, but I do not remember which doctor it was.
Ginger?
It was, I don't remember. I don't remember if it was the ginger one or if it was there was the hologram one, and then...
Yeah.
It makes me think of the Babylon 5 episode where...
Okay, we have just alienated everyone who might even be listening. Everyone's turning down their iPhone volume, thinking, "Oh gosh, what even is a Babylon 5?"
You can't alienate people if they don't have any idea what it is you're talking about.
Oh god, that was funny.
Okay, so before we talk about Babylon 5,
no, we're not talking about Babylon 5.
We can talk about it off microphone. So now I'm thinking about Dad's thing about psychopaths having an evolutionary function of rooting out the bad bits of society and making a society that is perfect for us, normally functioning humans. And there are things they function really well in the army and in what the police force is now being super criticized for at the time of recording. And psychopaths are probably the ones behind the terrible atrocities that are now considered war crimes. And, now they're the ones that are being accused of police brutality and stuff. Just having no remorse for the people they're arresting. Yeah. Not that I'm agreeing that is their evolutionary purpose, but just a card for Dad's hand.
It is an interesting thought that they can, even if they are not necessarily a part of society, there are parts of society where they can fit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I read a paper in English last year about a guy who, they scanned his brain or whatever, and he has the brain chemistry of a psychopath. They can tell he has psychopathic tendencies, but he's led a successful life because he had super supportive parents, and he's a good doctor now, but that he has a higher, I want to say propinquity, but that's not the right word. Propensity for risk taking. The main thing he recounted was going into caves with bats that he knew had the Marburg virus disease, whatever. And to some extent, I see that in myself and people I know versus you, Joshua. that is not a huge risk taker, and wonder if psychopathy is also more of a spectrum than
that's an interesting
a specific condition.
That is a very interesting thought.
Yeah, I had actually been thinking about psychopathy there are polygenic traits like height, where it's not just one gene that controls the trait. It's like it's a bunch of coin flips, not just a single coin flip as to whether or not you have that trait that all add up. So if you think of psychopathy as like the ultimate opposite of empathy, then, there are people who are on the complete end of the spectrum, like Mom, who is like the most empathic person I know. And so
I don't know, she can be pretty manipulative.
And she would absolutely beat the tar out of anybody who ever harmed you guys.
Which is, I don't know, is that not empathy?
I think that's
Maybe
totally
so. Good point.
So in that sense, we could see psychopathy not as like a evolutionary just freakazoid mutation, but just as a natural product of polygenic trait patterns.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Well, unless anyone has any other final thoughts to add, I know that we will never be able to plumb the full depths of a topic as deep as this. That was a really big question, Dad.
Yep.
Good on you.
And thank you, Andrew, for clarifying the difference between sociopathy and psychopathy.
Well,
so that was really what I meant.
I did that totally unintentionally because based on what I read in that book, I've just thought they're the same thing for a year now. So,
well, thanks to both Joshua and Andrew. Yeah, I was writing stuff down to say, and then you guys just said it and said it very well. So,
well, cool.
Yay begs mental link.
Hooray.
Yeah.
Well, in that case, I will go ahead and roll the credits. This podcast is created by the three of us, written by none of us, and edited and produced by me, Joshua, who now has a stutter. Hopefully it's also listened to and enjoyed by you, but no pressure, hey? So join us next time as we unravel more of the world's big questions, or maybe just get tangled up in them. We'll see how things go when we get there. And if you have any questions, suggestions, or ideas on how we could make this podcast better, send us a message at littlemiddlebiggle@outlook.com. Love, thanks, and T-Rex hugs from all of us. We couldn't have done this without you, especially you, Dad. Say bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Live long and prosper.
Oh, that's a good sign-off. Why didn't we take that one? Why hasn't anyone thought of that before?